นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening. Today someone at the monastery asked a question, what brings people to practice Buddhism, or why do they practice Buddhism? So I said most of the time people become motivated to practice Buddhism because they see there's a need in their life. And that need is that they have some suffering, discontent, unhappiness, and they're looking for a way to cope with it, go beyond it. That's probably the most correct approach to Buddhism in line with the Buddha's own experience and his teachings. This person seemed to suggest that maybe not everyone does have suffering in their life, but I think what most people find, especially if they practice meditation, very quickly they become aware that they do have different kinds of physical and mental suffering in their life, albeit many of the kinds of suffering we experience or become aware of are quite small, fleeting. But just the fact that you're exposed even just to small and fleeting moments of discontent or pain through your life, when it all adds up, you could say, life has a certain amount of stress and suffering in it. And of course, quite often we get ourselves into much more difficulty than that. And we have what you might call big suffering to do with health issues, money issues, relationships, society around us. It just depends on who you are, where you are, and your own karma. But the Buddha encouraged us to investigate this phenomena or fact of life that we do experience suffering. He used the word dukkha, and dukkha has many sides to it, or there are different kinds of dukkha. There's the obvious one, just what we call dukkha vedana, painful feeling. So from time to time you get aches and pains, illness or injury. That's usually associated with the body, physical cause, but then of course we have painful feeling in the mind, say the sadness of losing someone you love when they pass away, the discontent to do with there's things you want to do or get and you can't get them yet, so you're frustrated. The pain when somebody else is rude to you or insults you, and so on. All kinds of physical and mental pain come up in life. But there's also just the fact that life ultimately is made up of a whole range of experiences, physical and mental phenomena that are constantly changing. The world is changing, our body is changing, our mind is changing and experiencing different things from moment to moment, day to day. Just the fact of the changing nature of conditions, you could say, is dukkha, is part of the unsatisfactory nature of the world we live in. So many different kinds of dukkha. We chant it every morning in the monastery, or when we do morning chanting. Not getting what you want is dukkha. Getting what you don't want is dukkha. In short, not getting your wishes fulfilled is dukkha. So anyone who pauses for a moment and starts considering life, then usually people start to notice this. You don't even have to be like old or some kind of serious old philosopher or some wise old hermit living in a cave or something. If you ever watch the documentary The Mindful Way about Ajahn Chah and his monastery, which is on YouTube, you can see there's one young novice who's only, I can't remember how old, 12, 13 years old perhaps, and they're asking him about his life as a novice monk and what he would be doing if he wasn't a novice monk. And he said, well, he'd be looking after the buffalo in the fields because his parents were rice farmers. And he said, oh, it's a lot of suffering looking after buffaloes. So you only need to be a kid to realize that there is suffering in life. Whether it's looking after buffaloes or just trying to get on with your friends or later on in life making a living, earning a living, and so on. Doing whatever we do in life, whether you're a child, middle-aged, old-aged, there's suffering around because that's the nature of existence. It's there. But most of the time we run away from it and try and distract ourselves from it. But when you practice meditation, particularly, and you're cultivating these qualities of mindfulness and investigation of the Dhamma, then you're coming to look at things as they are, to see things the way they are. So you start noticing different kinds of discontent, suffering. But that's not the end of the story. The Buddha encouraged us just to make that first awareness, point of awareness, oh, there is suffering. Life has that part to it, that side to it. But then he went on to say, well, what can you do about it? And he said, well, look for the cause. Suffering doesn't just float out of midair, although it seems like it. It's not random, and it's not a conspiracy that the world is against you and therefore you suffer. There are causes for this. And on the deepest level, you can say those causes lie within each one of us. I suffer because I create this suffering in my own mind, out of my own experience. We tend to always attribute our suffering to others, external causes, or more likely to people. It's because of them that I suffer, whoever it is, one person or many people. But really, when you start to pay attention to your mind, you realize it's internal. It's the way you think, your attitudes, what you do with your mind, what you don't do with your mind. Half the time, there's things we should be doing with our mind we don't, because we don't realize how much potential we have. It's another thing the Buddha liked to point out. Born as a human being, you have this amazing potential because your intelligence, we would say this is the result of your good karma, that you're born as a human being. If you're ever having a bad day thinking everything is going wrong, you can always remind yourself, well, however bad it is, I must have done something right once because I was born as a human being. If you didn't do something right once, you wouldn't be here as a human being, however many problems you have. So having been born as a human being, you have this potential. You have intelligence, you have a body, even if you're not perfectly healthy or if you don't have the highest IQ score in the place, it doesn't matter. You have a mind that is able to think, reason, understand things, know things, and cultivate mindfulness. And that's like your resource, that's your gold mine there. You're sitting on your own gold mine right there. But again, we overlook it, we forget. But if you've been born as a human, you have the opportunity, the potential to know dukkha, but to know its causes, and then to practice and find a way out of this dukkha, this suffering. We can do it as human beings. And we can say that because other people have done it. The Buddha did it. This, what we call the Sāvakas, the enlightened, noble disciples of the Buddha from the time of the Buddha to this present age, men, women who have taken that interest to practice have done it and have freed their own minds from the effects of dukkha. So it can be done. And we have that potential within each of us. But we have to practice, and we have to bring in, we say the Dhamma, bring the Dhamma up in our heart, and bring our heart to the Dhamma in order to achieve that. Well, just as dukkha has its causes, it's not random or sort of imposed by someone else, it has specific causes. Well, there's also specific remedies to our dukkha, but we have to apply them. We get support and information and help, and good example from others, so that's why it's worth associating with Kalyana Mitta, good teachers, good people. But in the end we have to practice for ourselves and bring the Dhamma up in our own hearts. But there is always something, some point of Dhamma or some aspect of Dhamma, and when I say Dhamma I mean truth, that will help you to remedy whatever is the cause of suffering that you're being affected by. So when I was a young monk in Thailand, they used to have a saying, they say, well, you practice generosity or giving to remedy your selfishness and your greed. You practice morality to remedy your anguish and aggression. And you practice meditation or bhavana to remedy your delusions, your wrong thinking, your wrong views, your lack of awareness. So in the simplest form, the Buddhist path, which we know as dana, sila, bhavana, or generosity, morality, and meditation, it's giving us the remedy, the solution to the causes of our suffering as human beings. So we have the way of practice right there. We're fortunate, that's our good fortune. Not only are we born as humans, but we're in a position to practice, to hear the Dhamma and practice. You know, if you're here listening to this talk, well, clearly you have an interest, I would say, in finding out more and practicing more of the Buddhist path. And the Buddhist path can take you out of all kinds of suffering to beyond suffering. So the Buddha identified the causes of suffering, what we call craving, attachment. These are coming from basic delusions in our mind. We keep falling prey to craving because we don't realize where it's leading us. When we say craving, we mean wanting, the desire to want things, to have things, get things, or to get rid of things that we don't like. Wanting to have, wanting not to have. This is a powerful force in our mind. One way you could say we suffer also is that we cling to the things that we crave, and this very craving, this wanting, feeling I need this to be happy, I need that to be happy, if I can get rid of this problem then I'll be happy, and so on. We cling very tightly to our craving, and so craving and clinging go hand in hand. And the Buddha has worked out or saw for himself that this is the cause of human suffering. In the end, craving and attachment don't even belong to anyone. You could just say they're phenomena, they're things that live in the world, exist in the world, are present in the world, in the hearts and minds of human beings, but they're not personal, even though their nature is that we sort of take craving and clinging very personally. But they're not personal, and that's why you can actually let them go, abandon them. Because if they were really personal, they were really part of you, a person, there was something sort of solid and lasting, well then you'd be stuck with them forever. But they're not. They are abandoned. It's possible to abandon them. They can be let go of. But that's where the practice comes in, and that's the hard bit. First problem we have is to identify craving and attachment when they come up. Second is actually to do the right thing with them. And that's why we have to invest some time in developing this ability to look back at ourselves. Because where the craving and attachment arise, it's in our own mind. And that's the first kind of challenge. We spend so much time looking out from ourselves at other people and the world. We're not noticing our own craving and attachment. Even as it's doing its thing, running around our mind, making us think different thoughts and feel different emotions, making us say things, do things, we don't realize. We're always looking in you might say, looking in the wrong place. When we do experience some suffering, we all tend to start blaming somebody or something, getting it wrong again. As we know, when we start meditating, we probably notice straight away some craving. You might feel a little uncomfortable in your body, so you start reacting to that with craving. Or you may start imagining things you like, so you start fantasizing about stuff you like and want. Or you're remembering stuff you don't like or don't want, trying to maybe reacting to that with aversion or working out ways to get rid of what you don't want, don't like. Straight away, as soon as you meditate, you start experiencing craving usually. And to go against craving is not easy, because it's like an old friend who we're just so used to them, we just always give in to our craving, wanting, needing. We're just so used to it. It's easier, it seems easier. If you read Ajahn Chah's biography, there's this phrase or description he gave of when he was a new monk learning meditation, and he said he started to practice mindfulness of breathing and found it very frustrating. His mind just didn't want to stay in the present moment, didn't want to remember the breath, it wanted to think about everything else, which is probably what everyone else feels as well. We all have that same experience. So he became very frustrated. He said this feeling of frustration at first became very strong because he had a real faith in the Buddha and his teachings and a real desire to train his mind. It's the actual frustration of being unable to train his mind became very powerful, unpleasant feeling for him. It made him feel confused, fed up, probably mentally tired, I would imagine. Because he wanted to train his mind, he wanted to know, he wanted to have mindfulness, he wanted to know what the Buddha taught. And the more he tried, the more his mind wouldn't listen, and it'd run all over the place. So he's getting very frustrated. He said he had this thought, if I don't meditate, I feel fine. Whenever I try and meditate, all I do is feel frustrated because my mind's all over the place. So he could understand very well why people give up meditation. They misunderstand what's going on, and they're not willing to be patient, particularly in that first period where you're learning meditation and learning to train your mind. Many people are not willing to go through that because they actually feel, they want to know, they want to practice, but they feel so frustrated, it's just difficult. So they quit. So he almost gave it up. He thought, oh, when I don't meditate, I feel fine. When I meditate, I feel miserable, therefore I should stop meditating. Which may, in some circumstances, be the correct thing to do, actually. Some people meditate in the wrong way and it does make them miserable, or perhaps they should adjust or change. But often it's just a matter of being patient and working with your mind, because your mind is kind of fighting back, as it were, or reacting to your attempts to train it. We don't like to be told what to do as human beings. Up until now, and up until the point you hear the Buddhist teachings and decide to practice them, your craving and attachment has had its own way. That's what we're used to, following craving and attachment. We haven't really gone very far in training the mind to abandon or give up craving and attachment. We may have done it a little bit with certain things where it's necessary, but most aspects of our life, craving and attachment are coming up, and they've got a kind of a free rein. But one of the delusions we have is we think, well, if I can just follow every desire, I'll be happy. So we try and make our life in a way, set everything up so we can follow our desires. So what happens? Well, probably a lot of people think, the more money and power I have, I'll be able to do what I want, when I want, meaning I can follow my desires, then I'll be happy. Because if I can follow all my desires, get them fulfilled, I'll be happy. But what the Buddha pointed out on a deeper level is even if you do get lots of money and power, have a certain ability to follow desire and get the things you want and do things the way you like, you'll never be totally satisfied. It's impossible, because the nature of desire is it's never satisfied. He said desire is like the longest river you've ever come across, longer than any river in the world, the Nile, the Amazon, or whatever river is near you that you consider a long river. It's longer than that. It's endless, basically. Craving, attachment is endless, so it's impossible to achieve permanent happiness, satisfaction by following it. Even if you try and create the world in such a way and adjust things so you can follow it. If you look at the world, a lot of people are trying to do that. They're trying to be successful, earn a lot of money, get power, get fame, fortune, get control of their lives in different ways, as much as possible, so that they can follow craving and attachment. But what perhaps they haven't realized or fully accepted is it's impossible to do that. As long as we haven't accepted the truth, we are going to suffer for sure. And so even if you do become quite successful in the world in different ways, which is not necessarily wrong, but what you find is you still have this lingering or deep down feeling of dissatisfaction, discontent. It comes up sometimes even in a very sort of powerful way too, because sometimes we did part of the delusion when we think we've got enough money, power, success to follow our craving. If something comes along that still stops us from indulging craving, we get very upset, because we've created a sort of a world where we're trying to minimize the influence of craving and attachment. And then when something proves us wrong, we get very upset. So sometimes the more power and wealth and control you have, the bigger the suffering it can be. So be warned. The Buddha just pointed out that's just not the way to go. As I said, it's not that you can't go out and earn money and have a life and try and be successful and do things. That's not wrong at all, but it's more what you're doing with your mind as you do that, your attitude, your view about things. The Buddha said, take time to come back and observe your own body and mind from day to day and what's going on as you're working, studying, going about your daily life. And you'll notice where there's craving, you start to feel discontent and suffer. It's not something you believe in, because like the man today, I don't really have much suffering. You can believe that, and you can maybe kid yourself or kind of fool yourself for a while. I have no suffering, no problem, no need to meditate, no need to follow this Buddhist path. Meditation is so frustrating, and keeping precepts, having discipline is difficult. A lot of people think like that, and as long as they're not suffering too much, well, they carry on not working with their mind or trying to understand their mind more. But sooner or later it catches up with you. And then you sort of realize, maybe I do need to do something with this mind. That's why we come to meditate, that's why we come to study the Dhamma and practice giving, practice morality, sila, precepts, and practice meditation. What Ajahn Chah used to say is, okay, meditation, precepts, the practice of helping others, they may involve some short-term difficulty, challenges, pain. Sometimes, you meditate, maybe you're noticing pain in your legs, so you're keeping precepts and you're very frustrated because it makes life a little difficult sometimes, keeping precepts. But that short-term difficulty or pain is for a long-term happiness. And that's what you have to keep in mind. If you're really going to train your mind, of course there'll be some frustration. Of course, because you're going against craving. But if you can see it's for a good purpose, it will help you in the long run, then maybe you're willing to put up with whatever that frustration is. And quite often and quite quickly, you probably realize the feeling of frustration, well, it's just another feeling that arises, passes away. It's not actually that important or serious. It's not such a big problem. That's what Ajahn Chah did. He started practicing meditation. He was frustrated. And a number of times, he said in his early years as a monk, he got to the point where he thought it's impossible to train the human mind. It's just too difficult, too frustrating. I got too many cravings and attachments. It's all too much, too difficult. But he said, actually, that's probably a sign. If you reach that point in your meditation or your Dhamma practice, perhaps that's a good sign. Not that it's a feeling that you really want to experience. Of course, it'd be nicer not to. But it's probably a sign you're really trying. You're really sincere in your practice, in your efforts. And when you're sincere, you come up against the obstacles, you realize, it's quite hard work training this mind. And it may be very frustrating, even bring you to despair, even bring you to tears, as people keep asking, why did Ajahn Chah said the Dhamma practice will bring you to tears? Well, because it's so frustrating training the human mind to give up craving and attachment. Not easy. And so it can even bring you to tears, the things you have to do. And it's not that you're doing anything bad or wrong or extreme necessarily, but it's just frustrating, difficult. But how do you deal with that? Well, if you do get to that point of frustration, one is to be patient, another is to remind yourself why you're doing it, what the goal is, and try and see what you need to do to get through that feeling of frustration and see it's still impermanent. Don't take it too personally, just see it as a natural reaction. My mind is all over the place today. Okay, that's just normal, isn't it? That's a natural, the untrained mind is like that. You're angry, it's like that. You're sad, it's like that. You're confused, it's like that. Try and get a wise attitude, even when you're suffering or things are not going well. Try and get a wise attitude in your mind to deal with it. And to see, it will change, it will pass. Haven't you had that feeling in your mind before? Like if you've been meditating and feeling frustrated with your mind wandering all over the place, you almost certainly will have felt that before. Last week, yesterday, last week, last year, you'll have had that feeling of frustration, confusion, no mindfulness, no progress in my practice. You'll have had it before. And it's just another feeling that comes and goes. You don't need to pick it up or take it too seriously. You just notice, today I'm feeling frustrated. Okay, I'll be patient with that. I've seen it before. It'll pass. Maybe by tomorrow it's gone already and your mind has changed again. Little by little, this is how we gain some real knowledge and vision or insight into the Dhamma. You may pass through some moments of suffering, but they're not coming from the Dhamma or from the Buddha or meditation or anything. They're just the influence of craving meeting with the opposite qualities. When you're feeling very selfish, self-centered, but then you bring up some Dhamma to help pull you out of that, well, there can be a little bit of frustration there, but when you get through it, you realize, oh, you can let go of selfishness, you can see through the delusions of self, you can let go of anger, bring up kindness, compassion, or patience, and so on. You can see that the Dhamma can remedy whatever the suffering is, and you realize, it's possible. I don't need to take it so personally or give it so much importance in my mind. It's just that much. It rises, passes away. I've seen it arise and pass away before. Today I can watch it arise and pass away again. And that's the nature of the mind. It's not certain. The different moods, thoughts, emotions, they come and go. So in the end, the way through suffering, by first of all understanding it or knowing it for what it is, then looking for the cause and then working to abandon the cause. And the only way to really understand this is to do it, to do the practice. If we never do the practice, you may have faith in the Buddha as a good, wise person or some teacher as a good, wise person, but it remains a bit superficial, doesn't it? A bit like, what did Ajahn Chah say? We're a bit, when we only believe but we don't practice, then we're like the soup ladle in the soup pot. You never really taste the soup because the ladle can't taste it. It just ladles it out to other people but doesn't actually know what the soup tastes like. Unless we are willing to work with our mind, watch it, learn from it, understand craving, and then work to abandon it, then we're like the soup ladle. We just believe that the Dhamma is a good thing and the Buddha was a wise person and it's all good, but it perhaps doesn't go in that deep and doesn't really change us for the better. So we have the potential for practice to gain understanding, peace, all the good things that the Buddha talked about. But we have to work, we have to practice. So maybe for today I'll just say this much in the talk, and afterwards if you have any questions we'll do our best to answer them for you.